Get me a milk. Chocolate. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Monday Movies, where we are obviously moving to a strictly audio-based platform now, as you might have seen in the previous episode we did on Kingsman. Today, I'm always, once again, joined by Tom Gibbs, TGMA Productions, the man, the myth, the legend. How you doing?
That's me. I'm doing well, thank you, Stan. I'm pumped to go. I'm really excited to be talking about Back to the Future today, as our newest episode. I love these films so much. It's probably my favourite trilogy of all time.
Damn, that is serious praise, but I would almost agree with you. I'm halfway there, because that is also one of my favourite trilogies of all time. And we start off with what is arguably Robert Zemeckis' best film. Gibbsy, where do you stand on Back to the Future? Well, you've already said it, haven't you? It's one of your favourite trilogies.
Indeed, I really love the story. I really love the film score. I really love the acting for a vast majority of the main characters. It's very hard to think of anything that I don't like about this film, if I'm honest.
Yes, let's get into the opening scenes, because we introduce a character who is probably the coolest character you could ever put in a movie like this, and it's Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, who, that is the character I always wanted to be growing up as a kid. Wanted to skate, wanted to play the guitar, wanted to wear a life preserver, wanted to ride a bloody DeLorean. Who doesn't want to ride a DeLorean? That never happened.
Oh, apologies. Apologies to interrupt you. He's seen as the coolest kid of that era. As you mentioned, he does everything that you'd want to do as a teenage boy. Only thing missing is own his own car, which is solved later on in the film.
100%, and sponsored by Pepsi. But yeah, so in that opening scene, we introduce Marty McFly, and he is obviously coming to check on, I believe it's Einstein, isn't he? Because Doc Brown is out doing his own business, and he decides, I'm going to play the guitar, I'm going to put it to full volume because I've got nothing else better to do. And
oh yes, that scene. I laughed so hard at that scene with the amplifier. I thought at the time the amount of power that he is boosting the amplifier by, and the amount of gain he's adjusting the volume increase. I think if that speaker were a real speaker, I think Marty at the time would have either lost his hearing or shaken the garage down or something like that. But I'm grateful that it wasn't so graphic and that it was just a comical way of, the amp blows up in his face, sends him flying.
Well, if Marty McFly died in the opening 5 minutes, we wouldn't have a movie.
No, you wouldn't. You'd have roll credits, 5 minutes. Oh, that's a shame.
Huey Lewis music starts playing.
Yeah, the power of love.
Oh, you talk about the score by Alan Silvestri. Is that right, Alan Silvestri?
Yes, that is.
Who comes from the background of Predator as well, and you think, what a composer. That score is amazing and so memorable, and I think is almost the heart of the film. But the use of Huey Lewis is so great, and that lovely credit scene as well, where, damn, I'm late for school! Yeah, phenomenal.
It starts to play. The use of music I very much enjoyed throughout this film, because it uses the occasional song like The Power of Love, as well as, I think, which is the other Huey Lewis song that's used?
It's Back in Time.
Back in Time. That's the one with the credits.
Song.
But while you've got a couple of music credits in there, you've got Alan Silvestri's original score. It's another film that doesn't differ much in the in things like the melody throughout the film, but again uses a couple of the same motifs, but in very different ways to express emotion throughout the film. And I think my favourite use of that is the scene where you've got later on in the film where George McFly is punching Biff in the face.
I was just thinking the same thing.
And you've got the classic, the fast-paced, that you hear in the skateboard chase and in the opening, but instead is played in a very slow, a very pleasant to hear, a very uplifting tone as Lorraine is brought to her feet, and I think that's really charming.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful scene, and it's done with tact and tastefulness. It's such a beautiful scene, actually, because it really is the culmination of George McFly's character, because Crispin Glover, who I also love from Friday the 13th Part 4, as Jimbo, he's a great actor. He is introduced as this kind of just waste of space, isn't he, in obviously the normal 1985 timeline. So we see what kind of man he is. He's oppressed by Biff Tannen, And so they set up that present 1985, and we go back to 1955, and he had kind of always been a wimp, and unfortunately a peeping Tom.
Indeed.
You know, Lorraine McFly as well is equally as brilliant. I love her role. I think Linda Thompson, is it Linda Thompson?
I think it's Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson, thank you, Gibbsy. Got that wrong. I'm thinking of Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2.
Ah, I see.
She slowly starts to see the beauty and the soul and the humanity of George, and I think that's actually one of the most beautiful parts of the film.
George McFly, as you mentioned, he has one of the best character arcs. I think that the story changes about Marty's trip to the past, and it further explores George's change in his courage and his self-confidence. And I think that's one of the hidden morals in Back to the Future that originally you may not quite notice, is that, you know, if you've got the self-confidence and the courage to go about anything, then you can make it happen. And that's subtly introduced at the very end of the film as well. Quite nice.
Because it is a film that has so many memorable characters, and one of them is Thomas F. Wilson as Jeff Tannen.
Hello, McFly. Are you there? Are you Think, McFly?
Think! That's great.
I suppose that Thomas F. Wilson has said before in interviews that he's improvised a couple of the insults, such as, "Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?"
Which has a bit of payoff in Back to the Future 2, but that's for another episode, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah. Because of the non-linear structure to it, and because of it being a time travel movie, you get these actors. I would love to have just been a fly on the wall watching them act in the different time periods, because how much fun must that be to go, okay, I'm this person in 1985, I'm this person in 1955, and I'm a new person in an alternate 1985. How fun must that be? There's limitless possibilities you can do with performances like that, because the film is kind of bookended, isn't it, by the original 1985 timeline, you know, of just a pathetic family where nothing is going right for them, and by the end of it, George has written his book, hasn't he, inspired by the Darth Vader mask.
There was something I want to discuss about when Marty's in 1955. When he meets Doc for the first time, 1955 Doc, that is.
Who is a wonderful performance, by the way.
Christopher Lloyd, fantastic actor.
Great Scott!
Great
1.21 gigawatts!
1.21 gigawatts!
Sorry, Gibbsy, go ahead.
But the film is filled with a bunch of subtle mentions and just very subtle inclusions of different things, different sayings, and different plot points. But when Marty and Doc are talking, and when he's trying to convince Doc to take him back to 1985, there's a small scene where Doc says, well, he looks at the photograph of Marty and his two siblings, looks at the brother, and he goes, "This is clearly a fake. If you've cut off your brother's hair," you know, something like that. It's a very swift line, but is then moved on. But a couple of minutes later, that is reintroduced and is re-looked upon as, you know, the brother's starting to fade because of the timeline being altered. But I think that even though it was a couple of minutes before that main plot point was introduced, it was just very subtly putting it in there that, you know, something's happening.
That's a really good point to mention, is it's the little subtle touches to the screenplay. Because one thing that always stood out to me was how easily they set up the pamphlet of the clock tower, which obviously becomes a major part of the film. That comes back later on, and so, we need lightning. We need lightning to strike the DeLorean just so you can go back to 1985. Oh, we don't have any lightning. Yes, we do. The clock tower is going to get struck tonight. And that leaflet comes back, and you don't expect it, and it's kind of brilliant.
Not at all. They take what you think is just a small little detail, and they make it so much more important. I say they, I mean Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. They make little things like that so much more important than what they originally seem. I think that's an excellent, an excellent use of changing the plot and keeping the flow of the story going.
It is very much a Robert Zemeckis film, but it is obviously produced by Steven Spielberg as well. How familiar are you with Steven Spielberg?
I've not seen very many of his movies. I know that he made Jaws and Jaws 2. And is there a Jaws 3?
There's 4 Jaws films.
4 films about a shark. Goodness.
Well, in the Back to the Future lore, there is 19 Jaws movies.
Yes, of course. You got Jaws 19 in BTTF2, which we'll cover next episode.
Yeah, get back to the topic, Gibbsy.
But the only film I've really seen him contribute towards was Back to the Future.
Yes, because I would argue, as a big Spielberg fan, of his good movies, because he has made some stinkers. I would argue he hasn't made a good film for a very long time. But there is that Spielberg magic to it as well. So I'd be very interested to know if he ghost directed it in any way, because there are certain touches to it that definitely remind me of a Spielberg film, but it's still got that Robert Zemeckis magic to it as well. And I love, you mentioned little details as well, and it's these little throwaway lines, like with, Mayor Goldie Wilson saying, "Mayor, I'll run for mayor," or "Who's going to be vice president? Jerry Lewis? Ronald Reagan? The actor?" It's just,
Those subtle little things. Oh, yeah, they are fantastic.
Like the TV one. Sorry to interrupt you, Gibbsy, but like the TV one where he says, "Oh, what's it? This I've seen this one. It's a classic. It's where they go out in space or something." Oh,
Yeah.
wait, what do you mean you've seen this? It's brand new. Oh, I saw it on a rerun. What's a rerun? It's just great.
Oh, I love that moment. I put that in as another one of my little subtle points. But yeah,
Nice one.
you just think, oh, okay, hang on, that's a man from the 80s not realizing he's in 1955.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. I wanted to talk briefly. There was mention before the film was started in production. I think Steven Spielberg originally wanted for the time machine in the film to be a fridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I read about this somewhere in an article. But the original concept of the time machine was for it to be a refrigerator. I don't know if it was Spielberg or if it was the two screenplay writers.
That's hilarious.
But the reason it was changed is because the two didn't want any kids, like small kids, jumping into refrigerators, hoping that they would time travel. But that was changed. But one thing I thought was quite interesting was that Spielberg later used that concept in, I think it was Indiana Jones 4.
Yeah, Crystal Skull, the term "nuke the fridge" comes from that film, where Harrison Ford gets in the fridge and somehow survives an atomic blast. So that's actually the first thing I thought of when you mentioned that fridge. And you've got to love the fact that the DeLorean was a very dysfunctional car that didn't actually work very well. But that was the vision of what a time machine would look like, with a little Mr. Fusion on top, where you just put in banana skins and beer and cans, and supposedly that gives it fuel. I love that it's kind of a stupid movie.
Yeah, I love how they chose the DeLorean to be the car used as the time machine. Because I think another change that was tried to bring in was for the car to be a Mustang instead. And indeed, and Bob Gale said to Ford at the time, Doc Brown wouldn't drive no Mustang. He wouldn't drive one of those. He'd drive an outlandish car such as the DeLorean DMC. Didn't do very well at the time it was made. There's only a small number of cars made. It was seen as a bad car and outdated at the time of the movie shooting. But it's that gives it that iconic look, I think. The wackiness of the DeLorean DMC. You look at one and you think, oh, Back to the Future, straight away.
I think it's really good production design because it's got a lovely kind of silver greyish metallic look to it, and the doors slide open upwards. So it's futuristic. It's a very futuristic looking car, and I'm surprised we're not seeing too many of those nowadays. But yeah, the car is intricate, and it leads to what has got to be one of the best scenes in the film, which is when they're trying to outrun the Libyans. Who do you think? The Libyans!
The Libyans, they found me! Run, Marty, run!
I don't know how, but they found me.
Oh, the chase between the Libyans and Marty is there's only a couple of chase scenes, but I liked that one, and that was the one where I was most edge on my seat on my first watch of it.
That is such a good point. You just made me realise the film is not really an action movie. Yes, there's action elements to it, but it really is a constantly entertaining film without much action. But when it has action, it almost feels like it's in service of story. Like, one of my favourite scenes is actually when Marty uses his skateboard in 1955 and is impressing his mum. He's skateboarding away from Biff, and Biff Tannen goes straight into a truck full of dung.
Oh yes, it's such a satisfying end to that scene where you've got we've got Biff Tannen lose control of his car, go straight into the horse dung. And you think, oh, there's going to be very little way of him getting out of there. But the strange positioning of just a cart full of dung in the middle of the town of Hill Valley,
with not even like a proper shield to defend it from falling over.
Yeah, no, not at all. Just being open there in the back, ready for it to be ramped into or something like that.
But I love that it's a film about changing the future and actually trying to do something about your life at the end of the day, because ultimately, in some sense, destiny is within our control, isn't it? We do have a say.
It very much brought that concept into light towards the later third of the film,
100%.
where you've got that confidence change in George McFly that eventually leads to Lorraine and George getting together, but through a different means. Instead of it being an accident like how it was originally when the two met, you've got George showing like, I'll defend my woman.
100%, 100%.
Fantastic.
We are unfortunately coming to an end on our Back to the Future episode. This is a film.
Such a shame.
Yeah, it's a film that I could talk about for hours because it is one of my favourite movies of all time, and one of those rare films that is actually a childhood favourite, but you can actually appreciate it as a mature adult and see that it's just a brilliantly written story, isn't it, Gibbsy?
Yes, I mentioned it briefly at the beginning, but I love the story for it, and I think it's woven together so nicely.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Guys, thank you very much for watching another episode of Monday Movies, where Gibbsy always joins me, my good friend, my good pal, my good film enthusiast. Gibbsy, where can we find you?
So I'm most active these days on my YouTube channel, TGMA Productions. I upload music and audio related things, whether it's uploading my own work, my own writing, my own compositions, or whether it's just music in general. It's also where I upload the Monday Movies each week, every Monday at 5 o'clock GMT.
Obviously on my channel you can also find a lot of short films, a lot of music, and obviously the episodes of Monday Movies. So guys, thank you very much for your time. Please let us know what you think of Back to the Future in the comment section below, because it is a very special film for many, many people out there, including us, and it's kind of aged very, very well, despite being set in a very specific time frame. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and we shall see you in the next episode.
Yeah, take care everybody.